A Skeptical Approach to Flying Saucers and Aliens by Terence Hines. From the online columns at skepticalinquirer.org. Neil deGrasse Tyson's new book, Take Me to Your Leader, has attracted controversy in the skeptical community. Some believe that Tyson has abandoned his previous skeptical attitude toward flying saucers. Perhaps this idea was caused by the first line in the book. Ever since childhood, I've wanted to be abducted by aliens, which Tyson has also said in various interviews. The book is divided into 7 chapters, each with the word alien in the chapter title. The first chapter, Alien to Us, discusses how aliens have been portrayed in the media and how real aliens might look. It's a fun chapter because it delves into TV, Twilight Zone is mentioned frequently, and film depictions of aliens and discusses their plausibility. I must fault Tyson, however, for failing to mention the best non-carbon-based aliens in film, the non-living rocks and the monolith monsters, 1957. Alien to Them, Chapter 2, takes the opposite tack and asks how strange we would appear to aliens. I've never seen anyone address the question from this point of view. The chapter ranges from Voltaire's 1752 Micromegas, a 23-mile-tall alien from a giant planet, to modern representations of aliens and their reactions to humans. As an example of how odd we would appear to an intelligent photosynthesizing alien plant, Tyson says, they'd be astonished to learn that all humans kill living things for their sustenance. Alien intelligence, and how we would communicate with them, is the topic of Chapter 3. Early in the chapter, Tyson proposes that it may be a fool's errand to communicate with an intelligent alien species, but he wisely then backtracks and suggests several methods of doing just that. One avenue that has long been proposed is mathematics. No matter what the nature of an alien civilization's communication, the Pythagorean theorem will be the same everywhere in the universe. Tyson wisely suggests keeping a small 3-dimensional representation of the theorem with you, in case you run into an alien that communicates through touch. Tyson goes astray a bit in Chapter 3. Pointing out that we share 98% of our DNA with chimps, he implicitly assumes that that extra 2% is responsible for the species' differences in intelligence. He then hypothesizes another species, call it Species X, with 2% more DNA than humans, and assumes that the difference in intelligence between Species X and humans would be as great as that between chimps and humans. But this need not be so. That additional 2% in Species X might be allocated to some features unrelated to intelligence, such as different and more complex sensory processing or physiological mechanisms needed for an ability to extract sufficient oxygen from water. So Species X could both live on land and survive submerged. That extra 2% DNA might be all allocated to these additions, while the intelligence of Species X might even be less than that of humans, because the extra 2% is not enough to code for the extra features. DNA is fungible, it can be used for anything. The further argument that aliens might not be able to understand human speech because our thoughts are too trivial and stupid for them to comprehend seems unlikely. If these aliens were smart enough to get here, they would certainly be able to detect patterns in speech and tie them to meaning, however trivial and stupid they considered those meanings. In discussing the possibility that we live in a Matrix-type situation, Tyson suggests that if every phenomenon in the cosmos can all be programmed into a computer, then who is to say that our world is not a supercomputer model created by an alien? Tyson always capitalizes alien, nerd in its parents' basement. But writing a computer program that beautifully simulates something does not make that something pop into existence. Chapter 3 concludes with descriptions of creative and original alien life forms that have appeared in science fiction. Perhaps the most bizarre from this human standpoint is the giant sentient gas cloud in Fred Hoyle's 1957 The Black Cloud. Not mentioned is Arthur C. Clarke's 1958 short story Out of the Sun, in which beings made of plasma live inside the sun. Chapter 4, Science and Alien Technology, concerns aliens that might contact us, and thus must be more technologically advanced than humans. The chapter makes the important point that any alien technology would be limited by the physical laws that are the same throughout the universe, and thus limit our own future technologies. This rules out some of the supposed amazing physics-defying abilities of UFOs that have been reported, such as being able to turn 90 degrees essentially instantly. Left unsaid is that such reports can be explained by misperceptions. The chapter covers several related topics, such as why aliens aren't here, and continues the topic started in the previous chapter on alien communication. Alien scientists would have discovered 3 physical constants that are the same all over the universe. 1. The speed of light. 2. Planck's constant, and 3. G. The gravitational constant. These would be an important conversation starter for an encounter with an alien civilization. The periodic table of the elements, uniform throughout the galaxy, could also serve as a starting point for mutual communication. Having already dealt with what aliens might look like in the first chapter, Chapter 5, Alien Powers, concerns abilities aliens might have that would be, well, alien to us. This could have been an interesting exercise because it brings to mind the huge variety of different sensory and even motor abilities found in different species on Earth as beautifully described in Ed Yong's An Immense World. I found this chapter disappointing. Tyson notes that it would be handy for aliens to be able to sense electromagnetic radiation outside the range that we detect as visible light. True enough, but there isn't any further description of how such abilities might benefit aliens, and in which environments such benefits might accrue. There is a discussion of the abilities of Superman. Tyson correctly points out his X-ray vision was absurd because Superman was portrayed as having X-rays coming out of his eyes. No real alien would ever have that sort of X-ray vision. The powers of several science fiction aliens are considered but are, correctly, dismissed as totally implausible. The chapter would have been greatly improved by more discussion of what real aliens might be able to do in the environment they find themselves in, such as the plasma previously mentioned. Chapter 6, Alien Evidence, starts with a discussion of the fact that UFOs are seen more in the United States and other English-speaking countries than elsewhere. Tyson comments that aliens would have no specific reason to favor one country or another, an assumption that I think is questionable. In any event, what this pattern of reports has to do with evidence for aliens isn't clear. The problems with the grainy 1950s and 1960s photographs of UFOs are briefly discussed, although none are shown. A most important driver of UFO reports, pareidolia, is nicely covered. Alien proponents often demand that skeptics prove that there are no aliens. Tyson acknowledges that it's impossible to prove a negative, but makes a very strong case that one can make the negative seem very, very likely in the case of UFOs. In this regard, he makes one of the strongest points against alien visitation. With the billions of smartphones all over the world, why aren't there good, clear pictures of aliens, flying saucers, and the rest? Chapter 6 points out that during the 2023 to 2025 congressional hearings on UAP, unidentified anomalous phenomena, the new official term for UFOs, there was testimony under oath that witnesses had heard from someone who had seen an alien, or that they knew themselves that there were aliens, because they talked to some who had heard about it from a high-placed official, blah blah blah. But no actual evidence other than hearsay appeared. Tyson makes the powerful point that in science there's no such thing as a credible claim or a credible witness, only credible evidence. And all those widely reported hearings produce not one tiny little bit of credible evidence for aliens. At the end of the chapter, there are 10 rational perspectives that make it clear that aliens are not very likely. These are excellent points for any skeptical discussion of the topic. The final chapter, Alien to Me, covers several topics, such as the search for intelligent life in the universe, and how Senator William Proxmire's criticism led NASA to shift to research on exobiology, life of any kind off Earth. The alien autopsy film is mentioned, as well as the existence of religions based on belief in aliens. Reading the book makes it clear that Tyson has not stepped away from his skeptical position in any way, shape, or form. I read the book in 2 days and enjoyed it. It is an easy read, but it is not a heavy, referenced academic treatise on UFOs and related topics. This lighter tone may have prompted some people's dissatisfaction. It will be an excellent introduction to the skeptical approach to flying saucers and aliens for readers starting their skeptical journey. Thank you for listening to Skeptical Inquirer Audio Edition. This podcast is produced by the Center for Inquiry at our headquarters in Amherst, New York. If you would like to support our work, please consider subscribing to Skeptical Inquirer magazine at skepticalinquirer.org. It is listeners like you that make our work possible. With your support, we can continue to promote science, reason, and secular values throughout the world. Thank you.